I am happy to be here, and I look forward to establishing and building some relationships with the East Bay CLCA chapter. So thank you so much. And the first slide, please. You can skip that one too. That's just my contact information. So I just want to share that California Service Water Group, we serve in 4 states in this beautiful United States of America. You can see there we're predominantly in California. We serve about 2 million plus people via the whole list of 6,000 miles of main. I won't go through all of it, but we are an investor-owned utility, which basically means that we are governed by the California Public Utilities Commission. So they approve or deny every and anything that we do, and we ensure that we provide the best quality, best service, and the best value for our customers in every state that we serve. Next slide, please. This is just a brief sort of visual from 2019 of that I pulled from the USDroughtMonitor.gov website. And that's a great website in case anybody is interested in going to take a peek at that. It's very informative, but you can see there that in 2019, we of course had some issues with water concerns and drought issues. So can you go to the next slide for 2021, please? I purposely skipped 2020 because I was kind of hoping that year would just sort of go away in a way, but you can see the difference that we have experienced in just these last 2 years. And we have portions of our beautiful state that really have more concerning water issues than others. And so just showing you this, I know Anya is going into a little bit more information in her slide about the weather patterns and so forth, but I just wanted you to get a visual of this and keep that in your mind as we talk further today. Go ahead. So, you know, I'm thrilled about this opportunity, right? One of the things that's so important to Cal Water and myself is that we partner, because we can't do this alone. Our goal as part of the conservation team is to help our customers save water. I have conservation in my title. It's what we do. So to partner is the best way to do it. And you can see I obviously put landscape community on the very top. In my opinion, Cal Water partnering with the landscape community is just, you know, kind of a match made in heaven. The landscape community quite literally has their boots on the ground. They are in touch with potentially our mutual customers, have the expertise to explain aspects of water conservation on their property that a customer can understand and potentially take the advice of the landscape professional. And I just can't stress how important that type of a relationship is that you have with your customers, who oftentimes are our mutual customers. So to me, it's important for you to know, not to go to my next slide yet, but for you to know that Cal Water, we actively market our programs. Again, our goal is to help our customers save water, and we see the landscape community as a additional conduit for that. We do market. So my thoughts are, I would like our mutual customers to hear about our programs from landscape professionals first, so that, you know, if you're going in with a bid package, you've got the Cal Water or the East Bay Mud or the Zone 7 rebate information right with you, so that you can address the potential water conservation opportunities right then and there. So next slide, please. With regards to our programs specifically, these are for commercial customers. You see our website right there. We have, these programs are available to Cal Water customers only. And in the Northern Cal District, I'm not sure 100% who is on the call, but I'm going to presume it's a large group of landscapers. And we serve in Livermore and various other cities in the San Francisco area, including Bayshore, Mid-Peninsula, Bear Gulch, Los Altos. So if you have a list of customers that you're not sure who the water provider is, and I'm happy to help. If you want to contact me, I will really walk you through the process of, even first finding out if it's a mutual customer, completing a rebate application, whatever it is that you need help with, that's what I'm here to do. So I'm really eager to work with folks that are also eager to help customers save water. This customized incentive program is really for projects that will save water, but maybe aren't in that group that you see of indoor or outdoor programs. I'm sure your guys and gals aren't necessarily concerned with toilet rebates, but they're on the list. We all know here on this call that we're going to get the biggest water savings out of ensuring that our landscapes are tight and have the most high efficient devices on them. And as well as really the behavior, I always say, water conservation is both behavioral and device driven. So this is consistent with sharing knowledge with our customers. And if you go on to the next slide, oh, that's it. Oh boy, that's my contact information. We do have an opportunity to continue later on in this presentation to answer some direct questions and so forth. But Eric, I'd like to pass it on to you for our next presenter. Thank you for your time, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Susan, for introducing yourself. That was great. Very, very informative. Thank you. Now we'll go ahead and introduce Anya with East Bay Mud. Anya, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm a water conservation representative at East Bay Mud, part of a great team in the water conservation department. And I work with large landscape irrigators. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about our service area and then get down to the details of our landscape rebate. So you can go ahead to the next slide. So our water for East Bay Mud does come from the McCollum watershed in the Sierra Nevada. We have two reservoirs downstream of the watershed, the Pardee and Comanche reservoirs, and then the water travels 90 miles east to through our water ducts to a number of reservoirs in the East Bay service area, and then gets distributed to about 1.4 million water customers out in the East Bay. Next slide. And can't remember, was this the next one or is there one before this? Sorry. Okay, just want to make sure. So I wanted to show the current water supply for our specific district. As we all saw in an earlier slide, we have had some dry years. As we all know, California is a drought state. We do go through dry periods cyclically. And of course, we've got climate change throwing an extra wrench in things. So this year we are about 60% of average. You can see we had a pretty wet year in January, but everything else is coming in below 50%. Maybe we'll have a miracle March by the end of this month, but that remains to be seen. So every year, and especially this year, water conservation incentives are more important than ever. So next slide. So our landscape rebates cover both lawn conversion and drip conversion. So that's going from an overhead sprayed lawn to a low water use landscape, or overhead sprayed trees and shrubs to drip. And then we have a number of rebates for irrigation equipment, like replacing older school nozzles with the high efficiency rotating nozzles, putting in self-adjusting controllers, pressure regulators, installing irrigation submeters, and we also have a flow meter pilot right now as well. And for our commercial customers, which does include multifamily, we can give out about 15,000 max per meter per 2 years. So every 24 months, you're eligible for another rebate. So if for sites that may have, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of square feet of landscape that they want to rebate, sometimes, we have people do it on a rolling basis if they really want to maximize their rebates. And of course, we also have that for residential customers. And so the way the process works is the big thing is you can't do a project and then come to us and say, all right, where's my rebate? We have to work with you the whole way through. So definitely apply before you start any digging if you're removing a lawn. And the reason for that is we do have a number of ecological management best practices that we want to make sure all of our projects are hitting. So that includes making sure we've got low water use plants, the correct irrigation equipment and application. And we basically just want everyone's project to succeed no matter what the size is. And so we like to have a lot of involvement in the process. And after the project is concluded, we do generally do an on-site post-inspection to make sure that everything is performing correctly. And this is just a slide to show you, you can go to the next one, lawn, and then what a low water use landscape looks like. I'm sure many of us are familiar that low water use doesn't mean, cactuses in the desert environment. We have lots of native plants and Mediterranean adapted plants that work really well for projects like this. And I also did want to plug some webinars. We do have educational webinars that we are doing every spring. If you have anyone on staff in your organization that may want some free education, please go to ebmud.com/watersmart, and we have these free webinars coming up in the next weeks. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I did want to make one more plug for our irrigation only customers. We do also have a water budget program that gets sent out every billing cycle that helps folks stay on track. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. And thanks so much for having me.
Great. Thank you, Anya. And just a quick question, Anya, before I introduce Chad. I know a lot of our chapter members had worked with Dave Langridge in the past and Scott Sommerfeld, and are probably wondering where Dave and Scott have gone. Can you fill us in on that?
Sure. Yeah. So Dave and Scott have both retired. Scott actually retired more than 2 years ago at this point, maybe almost 3 years ago. And Dave retired about a year ago. So I've taken over Dave's position. And as I was saying to my colleagues earlier, before we started this call, I do have big shoes to fill. I know Dave was a very knowledgeable and well-loved fixture in the landscaping community in the East Bay. So I look forward to meeting and working with all of you that are on the call today. Please do feel free to reach out to me at the contact info if you would like to do a little meet and greet. And then, yeah, for Scott, we have my colleague, Kristen Bowman, who is she's actually the one that manages the commercial rebate program. And then we have a few other of us on the staff that sort of kind of fill in aspects of Scott's roles together as a team. So if you have any questions about any of our other staff members, we're all a great, helpful bunch and happy to connect with you.
Great. Thank you, Anya. Next, I'd like to introduce Chad Sutton with Gachina. Chad, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Eric. I'm excited to be here, everybody. And it's great to get support from our local water districts and distributor partners, because I think it's really important that we work hand in hand to make all these outcomes that we're shooting for a reality. So it's great to see him here. Let's go to the next slide. Real quick, Gachina. If you didn't get a chance to meet John Gachina, you missed a great man. He was a wonderful guy who started Gachina about 30 years ago and was a big supporter of the CLCA, one of the founding fathers, and really embraced what the CLCA could do. And I was fortunate to get to work with him for a little while. John and his wife, Jackie, grew the company to 5 branches. We've got about 400 employees, 25 irrigation techs. I am overseeing and head up all of our water management and irrigation services. And we really focus on large commercial sites. So that's our bread and butter. We do a few estates, but mostly we're a commercial-based company. Next slide. So what is my role here at Gachina? Well, I wear a few hats, but mostly it pertains to coming up with a strategy of how we're going to be a world-class water management and irrigation company. I have oversight into every one of our properties that we manage. And then, really what I'm trying to do is help my team come up with the right product mix. So we're focused on the right equipment that delivers the best results. So I get to dabble in a lot of that. And training, that's really where I think we can make the biggest differences with our training. So I'm really excited about a lot of the good training that we do over at Gachina. And lastly, our topic today, one of my absolute favorites personally, is the technology side of things. I love it. I think it's got so much potential. And so I'm excited to talk to you all more about it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Chad. And again, really appreciate you joining us today, covering quite a big territory. We appreciate you joining and sharing your expertise. Now moving on to last but definitely not least, Mike Valentine, who, Mike's the guy that I always turn to when I get stumped on an issue. So I'll let Mike go ahead and introduce himself if you haven't met him.
Well, thanks, Eric. As Eric mentions, my name is Mike Valentine. I work for Imperial Sprinkler Supply, and our company is a California-based company. It's an irrigation distribution warehouse, and we have 23 total branches. If you want to go to the next slide for me. We have 5 Northern California locations up here, 2 in the Sacramento region, and 3 in the Bay Area. We cover just about everything that you need for your landscape and irrigation. My division, what I do is work for a company for the division of Imperial Technical Services, and what we do is assist companies like Eric mentioned and like Chad, and assist you with A, supplying the equipment, and then B, also helping fit things into the budget, get the right product for the right for the right application. And with that, I happen to get a lot of support from our manufacturer partners like Rainbird and Hunter and Toro, etc., all across the board. So I happen to see a lot of the stuff that you guys as contractors don't get exposed to right away unless you're at the IA show, those type of things. I get a pretty good first look at some of the new products. And as Chad mentioned, I'm interested today to share some of those cool technologies that are out there that should change our business for the positive. Because it's one thing that I know that we have to do a better job of as an industry is to embrace these technologies and implement them completely, so we can actually save water and create this avenue where we can continue to grow in the state of California with the water supply that we have. So you can go ahead and switch to the next slide. It's just a little more contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me with anything that you have to talk about irrigation, and we're going to go through some more things on here. So thanks everybody for having me.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I know for me, just technology moves so quickly that oftentimes it's difficult to keep up with either the latest version of firmware or the latest product update. And Mike's just a great resource. He always tends to be on the cutting edge of new technology. So we'll go ahead and transition now into our Q&A session. What we've done is we've developed a list of questions for our panelists, and we'll go through these 6 questions here for our panelists and get their take on these topics. And then once we get through these questions, we'll go ahead and open up the chat and take questions from the audience. So the first question for our panelist is, what new irrigation technology has grabbed your attention over the past 18 to 24 months?
That sounds like a question for Mike.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to answer that. Start out. I think the number one thing from when it comes to irrigation control technology is flow. Flow is an underused either the management or just the pure watching of the flow is an underused technology. A lot of the stuff that we have with our MWELO programs are supplying and are making sure that we have flow as an option, but there are some great tools out there to now between wireless flow and wireless control that are going to allow us to retrofit these operations. So there's a device, a company called 2Core makes a device that's called the 2Core 3D that actually allows you to line share and pick up a flow sensor and a master valve with using some existing wire, so you don't have to run wire all the way out to the location. Company CST makes a similar product. It's called a Pathway. And then now the same 2Core company has it's a flow board. It's a UHF. I actually have some photos that I can share on my screen if we wanted to do that. I didn't know how far we wanted to go with that, but the flow share where I can actually have multiple flow sensors come through in multiple ways, either directly wired or wireless. That allows me then the ability to take it, bring it from that board and take it to a single controller, or split that information between two controllers. So there's tremendous amounts of technology in wireless control, wireless flow that allow us the ability to use the existing wires and the technology, so we can use the flow to not only see when there's flow that's supposed to be happening, but allow us to be better water managers and use the technology to its advancements. Chad probably has some good feedback on that as well.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely piggyback on that. I think flow is one of the best pieces of technology that we can add to a system to really open up everybody's eyes to the misuse and the waste and the lack of oversight to managing our irrigation systems. So a couple pieces of technology that I really have loved in the last 18 months or so is number one, there are new insert style ultrasonic flow sensors on the market. You might have seen them from Flowmec. They drop right into the old T that a data industrial flow sensor used to occupy. And with the ultrasonic flow sensors, I've been able to get readings as low as, a half gallon per minute on a pretty big main line too, maybe like an 1.5 inch, 2 inch main line, all the way up to 100 plus gallons. And the reason why it's exciting is I can now detect really small leaks. I can have good information about really small gallon per minute zones, so I can know zone overages. And then on the high side for big mainline breaks, I can have it all. And the resolution is really outstanding. And it's an easy product to install. It's 2 wires, you drop it in and you're good to go. So that's great. And then the other thing is I just would say that flow's evolving now that we have readily accessible cloud-based central internet controllers, because in the past, flow was great, but all the information lived inside of a box at your property. And the only person who ever saw it was the guy who was brave enough to open it up and push the buttons to look at the flow alerts. And, that was few and far between. And so now with cloud-based technology, all of those alerts, all of that data, it's like really brought to life because it's brought right to you. Pops up in your email, it texts you on your phone, never lets you sleep at night. Just it's actually really great because you can manage it to how you work. And so that for me has been a great evolution of technology.
And then I have one more thing to add, because yes, flow is good, but also there's also been a huge advancement in Wi-Fi connection on controllers, companies like Hunter with the HydroWise, Rainbird with their Wi-Fi link adapter. They've done great things to bring some of the technology that we usually use in large commercial sites right to the homeowner. So that's another thing that has really changed the landscape, no pun intended, on control. So I think those are things that I'm excited about in the industry for the contractors, for the industry as a whole, to grasp this technology and take it to the next level. Because at some point, we as an industry have to stay on top of it, because our customers are going to have more technical sense than us in the business, and we have to stay above that so we can help them grow.
Great, thank you guys. Next question we have here is, when it comes to water district rebates, what types of methods, devices, or technology are you seeing produce the best results?
So I'll piggyback off of the previous conversation and say that while we have some seasonality to our rebate applications, kind of pointing to what folks were just saying about flow sensors really being one of the up and coming technologies that's just getting better and better every year. Flow sensors are the rebates that we get the most consistently, no matter what season it is. And that's, we just launched this rebate program in the last year. And so I think people are really honed into that technology as being really helpful. And yeah, I just want to underline that for whether you're residential or a commercial customer in our area, if you're interested in, adding this technology to your water management toolkit, please don't forget that we offer a rebate. We want to make sure that everyone has technology like this available to them. So I just want to make a quick plug for that.
I just learned a whole lot. Presently, Cal Water does not have a rebate for flow sensing, but you can be assured that I will be bringing this information back to management. Looking at this particular question, asking about the best results, I think that, besides device-driven behavior of a customer and the water manager and the desire to help save water is something that really, really needs to be there. And what you guys were talking about as far as technology and getting the customer to have more insight into the water that they are using on site is incredibly beneficial. Because once you know what's flowing, the next step is let's, slow that flow potentially, and have beautiful landscapes utilizing less water. So
I want to take on to what Susan said too. Is I know I'm a culprit of it. I get all excited about the technology of the control, and control is great, but the behavioral of the person that's running it and the delivery system is the key elements, right? So that's why I think, having the pressure regulating stems as a rebatable item, having the rotary high efficiency rotary nozzles are also key elements, because if we have control and we know how much water is flowing, those are all great things. But if we're not putting water on the grass or on the plant material, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Right. And I'll just say one more quick thing. I definitely agree with you, Mike and Susan. And I think education, there still is sort of like an education gap with some of our water customers. A big subset of the commercial customers I work with are HOA managers, and it's usually the managers and landscape professionals that work with an HOA. They're all totally on board. They want to put in the flow sensor, they want to put in the high efficiency rotating nozzles, but then it's often the board members that are maybe used to things being a certain way. And they can be a little bit more resistant to sort of receiving that education and getting them into the 21st century. And I see Chad, you're nodding. Yeah. So that's probably my biggest kind of friction point out there is helping professionals like you guys convince their HOA customers that this technology will actually save them money in the long run.
Right, right. Smart controllers don't work because they don't go off Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 o'clock like they always used to.
Right, right.
HOA soundbite.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Great, thank you. Next question is, does anyone have a story, idea, or thought on how our industry can collaborate to save water?
I'd like to share that, and especially what Anya was talking about. I think education is key and collaboration, and I think this is not that this is the first webinar that's ever occurred with water agencies and landscape community, but more, please, because this is an opportunity for us to share our information and just really work together to make it work. For example, in Livermore, it was a few years ago, but we did partner with Cal Water partnered with the CLCA. We put on a MWILO course that just really had a really great turnout. Ooh. Do you guys all hear that noise? So,
yeah, sure.
Okay. So just, more education, more collaboration, and just keep at it. We have to keep at it to work together to save water for our future.
I second that. Education is definitely and across the board, from the owner of the landscape contractor to the guy that's cutting the grass, all the way across the board. We need to understand, as like what Chad mentioned. He's like, hey, how come it didn't come on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? It's because, hey, the ET is driving it, right? So that education has to happen all the way down the line from the customer to the very last person on a project.
Right, and I definitely second that, Mike. I find that this is a little more true with residential customers, but also can be the case with smaller commercial customers, is that there can often be that communication gap between someone who's managing the landscape and then the folks that are actually out there, every week or every month doing the maintenance, kind of trimming the lawn. It's often those folks, especially from smaller companies, the company may not have the resources to send their employees to, expensive trainings, or they might just not know about some of the free resources that are out there. And so I think making sure that we're using all channels of promotion when we do have these incredible educational events like Quell or Rescape. I do think I've noticed that there's a certain kind of layer of the industry that's not really getting reached. And I also think that making sure we're doing these trainings in more than just English is also really critical.
There's a Quell training coming up in Spanish, and it's if you want to learn about it, go to CalWEP, California Water Efficiency Partnership.
Great, thank you. Next question is, from your perspective, what can landscape contractors do to help water conservation efforts here in California?
I'll take that one. It's interesting. We play such an important role as the contractors because we're the hands-on day-to-day practitioners of water management. And I think one of the best things that we as contractors can do is know what the site's water budget is and understand how to track that on a regular basis and help our clients make smart upgrades to reach the budget when it's not obtainable because their system's old and inefficient. I really believe that that's the true measure of our ability to help is, can we know what the right amount of water is and then have the ability and flexibility to manage to that budget appropriately. I think that's where we can make a huge difference.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. That's definitely one of the things that I've always admired in having worked with you is your ability to do that. In a perfect world, everyone would do that. All landscape contractors would, but hopefully we'll get to that point at some point down the road. But yeah, I would.
Eric, I want to just tie into that. And so that's like you mentioned, Chad does a great job with that. Gachina, there's a great number of large commercial landscape companies that do. But I think where we can save, and I think the water purveyors will is with the homeowner, right? The smaller residential maintenance contractor, if they could understand water budgeting, even without all the tools that we have in a flow sensor and so on and so forth, if they can understand the concept of water budgeting and using some of the tools that we have to manage water, there's a tremendous amount of gallons to be saved, I think, in that residential market.
Great, thank you. Next question is, since most of you live, eat, and breathe water conservation, would anyone care to share any advice or words of wisdom from a past experience on a project that didn't turn out as anticipated?
I can be brave and share one. So collaborated with a local school district, another water wholesaler. This is not in the Northern Cal region. So exciting to put in a well-funded conservation garden at a high school. And the kids got involved. It was so great. Of course, there's PR and all the great stuff. Left there hoping, and well, you can't maintain on hope, of course, but no, the missing piece was the training on how to maintain and keep a nice, beautiful conservation, low water use garden up, and keeping it looking beautiful, utilizing just the right amount of water. So this is a poor story. It did not get maintained properly, excuse me. And it was in for about 5 years. And after 5 years, the school district decided that doesn't look good anymore. And they just ripped it all out and put some grass back in. So that was really unfortunate. There might have been a couple tears over that, but nonetheless, it just shows you that we have to really work harder to maintain the low water use gardens, and goes back to education. Let's help people maintaining our land know the best ways to maintain some native plants and low water use gardens.
Yeah, it's important. Everything Susan said, I agree with completely. And I also add that, it's okay to fail, especially with new technology. It hurts, it's painful. Nobody wants it fail. But, I have one personal experience where I asked our company, Jackie Gachina, if I could try out a new irrigation control system at her personal property. She was brave enough to say yes. And the first thing that happened is her water bills went through the roof. The water was all over the place. And ultimately the product didn't work as advertised, and the partnership we were hoping to build with this new technology didn't work out. But having permission to fail really empowers me and empowers other people to try technology. And I'll tell you what, the technology for the most part is really good out there. So I have way more positive stories than I have negative stories, but just it's okay, especially with new technology. A lot of times the only way you learn, get in there and click some buttons you shouldn't have, or flip the switch you shouldn't have. And it's not fun, but I've been there, and we'll all be there again. But keep at it. That's the takeaway.
Definitely.
And this isn't a failure, so it's kind of like something in progress. But we're finding that so we as a public water utility that we're a special district, we span multiple counties. We actually do the model water efficient landscape ordinance review for new projects for landscapes. And we're finding that Mwilo landscapes are consistently over their water budget, more so than any other kind of group that is in our water budget program. And we're still in the process of figuring that out. Not sure why yet, because, on paper, they have a very clear structure to follow for making sure that they're a low water using site, and it's just not really happening consistently. And so I'm hoping to work with more contractors and I don't establish some more kind of communication. I don't know where the bottom's falling out here, but that's something that I'm personally going to be focusing on in the coming years.
Yeah, I think that MWELO data that comes from the audit doesn't always get back to the person that's managing the irrigation, and those are key elements where people just go right back to their experience without using the data that came from an audit.
Yeah, I would just add that, you know, a lot of these new projects that get started, they're designed the right way, they're installed the right way, but they're not managed the right way. That's where the bottom drops out usually. It's, you know, in my experience, I see a lot of challenges with 90-day establishment periods turning into 9-year establishment periods. We overwater, we love our plants to death. And then a lot of times these brand new smart controllers that are mandated to be put in are left in their standard runtime modes, you know, basic, you know,
Right.
user-defined programs, and they're never put into the smart technology. So that usually is my experience when we take over a new project that's way over budget, but just my 2 cents on it.
That's some great insight. Thank you.
Anya, later I'd like to hear more about those results as they come in, especially since you're tracking that kind of data. That's fascinating. And it was unexpected information. So.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. So we have about 10 minutes left. I think it might be a good opportunity for us to go ahead and transition, and this might be a good segue because we do have a question, and I'll encourage any participants to go ahead and type in any questions in the chat box that you may have. But we do have a question from one participant, and the question is, how are plant palettes that include low water use plants and dry summer plants challenging water management?
Well, I'll take a crack at that since I actually am in charge of these landscapes. You know, my team and we manage almost 1 billion gallons of water each year. And low water plants are wonderful. The way it challenges us is we have to really rethink how much a plant truly needs. And, you know, I think one of the biggest sins that we commit as contractors is we want to overwater the plants in the hopes that somehow that is going to protect the landscape. And in reality, it doesn't. And especially with low water plants, they are geared towards long periods of drought. They want to put down deep roots that get infrequently watered. And, you know, a lot of times human nature, you know, throws irrigation at those kind of plants that Mother Nature never intended.
Yeah, and I'll just add to what Chad said. I agree with everything. It's also, in my experience, you have to zoom out a little and look also beyond water and all of the other, you know, mulch and the soil health that's really supporting that plant, especially if you have a mostly native plant palette. They can have different needs than a non-native plant palette if that's what you're going for. And so all those components are equally important. There's a lot of kind of initial, I guess, education, going back to education that kind of has to happen, especially if you're transitioning from a more conventional landscape to a low water or native landscape.
I agree.
Great. Thank you. Next question we have here is, this is a question for Mike. Mike, do you have any recommendations on how to address weak Wi-Fi signal on residential properties when recommending smart Wi-Fi controllers or Wi-Fi flow sensors?
You know, John, that is like one of the biggest problems with the Wi-Fi scenarios. And sometimes those controllers are quite a ways away from the router. There are some devices that are out there that you plug into an outlet, and it works as a signal booster for your Wi-Fi signal at the residential spot. I have seen those things work pretty well. Actually, Jeff Deming, our vice president up here, he was having a hard time with getting one hooked up, and that's exactly what we did. And it went through a firewall in one of the from his office, and it clicked right on. So there are some external devices that are out there that that'll allow you to do that. You plug in this little antenna, and it will continue that signal. But those are some challenges, especially when you're dealing with a controller that might not be located on the resident, maybe a adjacent building. But there are some devices out there, but it is the #1 challenge. So,
with that in mind, can I just add that if you're Mike, if you're a landscape contractor installing this weather-based irrigation controller or smart controller, and you know that there's some Wi-Fi issues, I mean, it seems so important to discuss that with the customer so that the expectations are real when it comes time to actually turning it on. Because I've, having been in customer service a little bit, I've heard some of those challenges as well.
You're right. Those to go into it loaded, right, and understand that, hey, we say, oh, if you have Wi-Fi, we can get it. We can get it done. It's not always the thing. It says, hey, if we have a good strong Wi-Fi signal, and so yeah, to get the expectation where it needs to be is definitely a spot to start from a contractor level. And I'd be happy to try to help anybody that needs to with those things. We do have some experience with our guys down in Anaheim with some of these signal boosters.
Great, thank you, Mike. Now we have Doug submitting a couple great questions. Anya, is it possible to stack rebates for lawn conversion and drip conversions?
Yeah, so, sorry, go ahead.
No, there's a second part, but go ahead and we'll answer the first part.
Sure. So the lawn conversion is, so a little bit of background. We used to have a 50-cent lawn conversion and then and a separate lawn drip conversion, but now it's 75 cents. And if you have a lawn that's on spray and going to drip, that 75 cents a square foot covers that. The drip conversion that we have is for non-lawn areas. So things like trees and shrubs that are on spray that are going to go on drip. And absolutely, from our 7 or so rebates that we have, you can mix and match. There's no limit to how many different kinds of rebates that you can apply for. The big limit is, of course, your water usage, because we are a water savings based rebate program. And then also there is that $15,000 cap for commercial customers.
Okay, yeah, so I think what Doug was probably asking is if he had a turf area that was irrigated by spray heads and he took out the turf, put in plants, and then went to the next step, took out spray heads and put in drip, would he be able to request a rebate for both those items?
Yeah, so so that lawn conversion rebate, it includes any drip that you may install for that area. That's why we went from 50 to 75 cents a square foot. And then the drip conversion, it's for non-lawn areas that are on spray that are going to drip. So for any lawn area that's on spray that you'll be putting drip in, that's all kind of, we assume that that's part of the process unless you happen to be hand watering, but for most commercial sites, that's not happening. So that's included in that 75 cents a square foot for the lawn.
Great, thank you. And then the next question is for Susan. Are there any cash, excuse me, I just got cash for grass. Are there any rebates for turf conversions in Cal Water?
Presently, there are not. And I mentioned earlier in the discussion that we are governed by the Public Utilities Commission, and in this particular rate cycle, we did not get any, we did not receive approval for any turf replacement programs. We are, however, we are looking into those for the next rate case cycle, and so stay tuned is all I can say right now. One thing I did forget to mention on our the spray body rebates is that Cal Water does offer up to $8 per head installed, spray body installed as labor for C27 on a commercial property. So that kind of ups the ante on opportunity for adding to the bid package.
Yeah, I just want to say kudos to Cal Water for having a labor component in there. That is, I think, unique amongst the Bay Area water districts. So nice job.
Thanks. Let's use it more.
Great. So as we come on the up on the hour here, I'd like to maybe just wrap it up with one more question for the panels. From your perspective, what will be the biggest challenge in landscape water conservation in the next 10 years, and what irrigation practices or irrigation technology do you foresee having the greatest positive impact?
Let me take a swing at that first. I think the biggest thing in the next 10 years is we will have another major drought. And the reaction of most water districts, as we've seen in the past with major droughts, is to mandate a 2-day per week watering restriction. And that is a huge challenge for landscapers, irrigators, and everybody in the horticultural world. I would challenge the water districts to take a broader view of restrictions, and for commercial properties, say, if you can manage to a budget or X% below your budget, you do not have to do 2-day per week watering. You are smart enough and able enough and professional enough to not get the same restrictions as homeowners. So I think that's going to be our biggest challenge. And the technology that's out there, if we do come to that, is flow optimization. Having a system with control, flow, and logic that allows us to apply the maximum amount of water without overtaxing a system hydraulically, and let the computer decide which sequence of valves to run simultaneously so that we can actually have a fighting chance to get down the amount of water with the restrictions. Because in the past, we were challenged to 2 days a week. And just by virtue of having only so many hours in the water window during that 2 days, a goal of 20% direct reduction was actually a forced 40% or greater reduction. So that's to me the biggest challenge. That's what keeps me up at night.
I can't speak to it in too much detail, but I can assure you, Chad, that water budgets are the future. That's all I can say.
Amen.
And often the state requires the reduction, of course, and then we have city ordinances to align ourselves with as a water agency. So it's really a kind of a full circle scenario, but I do know that the Department of Water Resources conducted a study after the last drought, and forgive me, I can't tell you if it's completed, but it had to do with water restrictions on a day of week watering issue. So we'll see if I can get my hands on that, but it's not, I can say that my feeling is that is not being ignored, Chad, because I get it, any of us who know about the plant water relationship know that you're right.
And I'll just make one more plug for education. I know we keep returning to this topic, but there really is still, from the various studies that I've seen that East Bay Mud has participated in, especially for the single family homeowners, there is still a pretty big education gap, especially for folks that are from older generations are just really used to seeing and doing things a certain way. And so we need to become even more creative at reaching those folks, or anyone that is, pretty wedded to an older school way of managing water, and making sure that we open people's eyes to all of the different possibilities and options for maintaining a beautiful landscape with smart water application.
Great. Well, that would probably be a good time for us to mention that CLCA State is offering a dual certification program where you can get your CLCA Certified Water Manager certification along with the QUEL certification. And that's all being done virtually right now. So, you know, one of the silver linings to COVID is the accessibility to education has increased. So definitely I want to encourage everybody to check that out if you're not aware of that. But I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Again, I really want to thank Susan, Anya, Chad, and Mike for just sharing and being open with your knowledge and sharing your expertise with us. So thank you again on behalf of CLCA to all of you for being panelists today. And thank you to our audience for participating.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having us. It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure.
this was fun. Let's do it again.